For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Milton Weatherhead. A couple weeks ago, I played an 8-player RTT at CarnageCon, and I wanted to do a sort of after-action report, talk a bit about the games that I played in our local scene, and start putting videos up on the channel. The current plan is to have somebody put out an after-action report after most of our local events, or if kind of the road team is getting together to travel going forward. So CarnageCon, it's a regional con in Killington, Vermont, at the ski lodge before the winter season starts. It's a beautiful site. My friend Brett, who you'll also meet on the channel, lives in the building next to me. We drove out from Burlington, hour and 45 minutes or so not too bad, and it's a beautiful drive. The tournament was 3 rounds on a mixture of Vulcus, ITD, and Chalnath terrain, and our local TO Will ran the event. He always runs a good event, and was the bye player since we had an odd number. Now, before I talk about the games, I want to talk about why we had an odd number. The highlight of the day for me was that a 10-year-old kid came and wanted to learn to play Kill Team and play in the tournament with us. His stepfather had found some of the 2018 Kill Team rules online and had some old Space Wolves, so they showed up to see if he could play. The kid was really game to try and learn a new system and was really engaged in each of his games. They ended up playing through all 3 rounds of the tournament, which is pretty impressive. And since then, they've come out to play with our club twice and put together a table to play each other at home. Now, the real reason I want to tell this story is because I want to brag about our local folks real quick. When you show up for a competitive game, it can be a tough change of pace to also be teaching the game to a brand new person. But all of our folks were really supportive, treated the kid like an equal, helped him learn the game, and made what could have easily been a frustrating experience into a great one for a family that are now both excited about Kill Team. All the Kill Team folks I've met so far in New England have been pretty great, but I'm really proud of the people in my local scene, and that's just part of why. But anyways, on to the games. So, 3-round tournament. I was playing Blades of Cain. For those of you that don't know yet, that's my favorite team, and the main reason I wanted to make this channel in the first place is because I want to make content about the team. I don't think they're the strongest, but if you really know their rules, in and out, they have way more play than the general community thinks. I'd played quite a few games with them in the new edition of Kill Team before the tournament, but this is my first tournament with them since Hivestorm released. Excuse me. So, round 1 is paired into Wyrmblade on ITD map 3. The mission was upload. I have a couple of photos from the tables that I'll splice into the video here. One thing you'll notice is that my local club usually plays with some scatter terrain on ITD maps, which does change how they play a bit, especially when the current GW official map layouts have some really big open rooms. So in this game, my opponent went with the Locust and Kellermorph, and the usual array of gunners. His equipment included 2 crack grenades, dynamite, and the ability to ignore obscuring while within 6 inches of the target. I took 2 Dire Avengers, a Striking Scorpion, 4 Howling Banshees, and a Striking Scorpion Exarch with a Biting Blade. For equipment, I took all the faction equipment options, took Overrun as my TAC op, and made it my primary. For scouting, I took equipment and picked up frag grenades while my opponent took reposition. So turning point 1, uneventful, we both staged up the board, didn't offer up any shots, he kept his gunners in cult ambush. Going into turning point 2, he won initiative, used the days at hand, I used Kane's Vengeance, and his first activation was using a Neophyte to get a Ceaseless Rending crack grenade off on one of my Banshees on the right side of the board, got 3 crits and a hit, instantly killing her. I moved a nearby Dire Avenger into cover in the hatchway, killed one of his other Neophytes, figuring that if my Dire Avenger got killed back by cult ambush and gunners, that's okay, but it was lower risk than activating my melee pieces so early, because if those get exposed, they have to go forward. If they get dropped, I'm in a much worse place. So, after a couple of activations where my opponent traded models to score points, he started committing ambushing gunners to take out my expended Dire Avenger, bringing them in clustered around his icon bearer on the left side of the board near a doorway. Since that was kind of the only place where he could get line of sight, they had to be pretty close together in order to still be within 6 inches of his drop zone. Now, between decent dice, a rune of shielding, contempt, the unstinting immovable technique, and a command point reroll, so I'm not actually sure how decent the dice were, but between all those things, my Dire Avenger survived through both gunners and an auto gun before being killed by the mining laser. So by this point he had both gunners, a heavy gunner, and the icon bearer grouped up near a doorway, since that was the only place he could bring them in to get that line of sight. They're far enough back that I couldn't normally reach them to do much about it, and my Dire Avenger had obviously already activated. But I was able to use a Howling Banshee to charge and kill that neophyte that had started the turn with that crack grenade play, and was able to kill him with a crit. This let me do a free dash with Rain of Tears, which just got me into frag grenade range of his clustered gunners. And frag grenades with Ceaseless, a Wraithbone Talisman, and Lethal 5-up are really bad news for 7-wound models with a 5-up save. I killed 3 of them, injured the other, and my opponent decided to concede during, I think, the next activation. By the end of Turning Point 2, he was down to his Kellermorph, Locust, Seismic Cannon Gunner, and a Neophyte Warrior, and I had lost 3 Warrior models, 1 Banshee, 1 Scorpion, and that Dire Avenger. So, started off strong. Alright, Game 2 was against Brett, who drove down with me, who was playing Legionaries on ITD Map 1, and the mission was Extraction. Brett brought a Khorne Chosen, Khorne Butcher, Slaanesh Shrive Talon, Tzeentch Meltagunner, Tzeentch Balefire Adept, and a Slaanesh Icon Bearer. His equipment was Chaos Talismans, Warden Armor, Barricades, and Crack Grenades. I ran a Howling Banshee Exarch with Mirror Swords, 3 Howling Banshee Warriors, 2 Dire Avengers, and 2 Striking Scorpions. Now, I don't normally take a Mirror Sword Exarch, and I don't think it's normally the best call into Elites. I usually go for the Scorpion Exarch with a Claw, but I figured that my Exarch would be really deadly to anything holding the Extract objective point, since they'd be down to 5s to hit between that and the Banshee Mask. So, a judgment call based on the mission here. I took all 4 faction equipment again, and took Confirm Kill as my TAC op, used that as my primary op, figuring that I would really need to get kills if I was going to win this game, and that I was likely to get bullied off of the points on Turning Point 2 and 3, and I was right. Excuse me. So, in scouting, I took equipment for crack grenades, and Brett took reposition. Turning Point 1, we both moved up and staged. On the left-hand room, he had his Butcher and Meltagunner staged to go after the point. On the right side of the map, he had his Shrive Talon and Balefire Adept kind of behind the door, and his Chosen and Icon Bearer were staged to head into the central room after that objective. Turning Point 2, Brett won initiative. He used the Khorne ploy, the Slaanesh ploy, and decided he was going to play for the crit op. I used Kane's Vengeance, and then for his first activation, he made his Meltagunner APL-4, moved, dash, tapped the point, and went on guard behind a barricade. I had already opened the door in front of him, so he knew I'd be able to get some shots on him, but this really puts pressure on me, since on this particular mission he's already capped 1 point, the second one's worth 2, so, I can go out and try to tap it, but then I'm immediately losing one of my models to the Shrive Talon, and it's probably going to cost me another to kill him, so that really puts me down a lot of material. I really don't want to be brawling on points with Marines, so I decided basically I was going to have to give up max points on the crit op and kill him fast and win the game that way. So I moved a Dire Avenger away from Melta range and shot him with Ceaseless using Vigilance of the Avenger. First shot of the game, after rerolls, Lethal 5-up, and Rending, I came out with 4 crits and dealt 12 damage to him after saves. Pretty lucky, but if you take enough Ceaseless shots with shurikens, especially with Lethal 5-up, you will chunk down even Marines. So I was able to finish off the Meltagunner, just shooting with a Striking Scorpion. On the other side of the board, Brett used his Shrive Talon to tap the right-hand point, scoring 2 on the crit op, and hanging out behind some scatter terrain and conceal, and getting the -1 to hit for melee and shooting from the Slaanesh ploy. He figured he was durable enough to kill anything I threw into him, since he can fight first as the defender, and could also potentially get some healing off of his Balefire Adept who's nearby. It was difficult, but I was able to kill the Shrive Talon between a Striking Scorpion, doing a drive-by attack with a technique to do some mortal wounds. I had a Dire Avenger walk up, throw a crack grenade, and shoot with Slicing Hurricane with Lethal 5-up, using the ploy to do a second shoot action. And I nearly brought him down, but his Balefire Adept killed my Dire Avenger and healed the Shrive Talon. So my only other model over there was a Banshee, who was in range to charge, but he gets to fight first as the defender. So luckily I charged, and I did roll 2 crits, so he could have parried one, but I'd still have one left over. Instead, he just hit me for 4. I hit him, Rain of Tears to disengage, and his Strive Talon was on between 1 and 3 wounds left. Banshee used her last APL to shoot with a shuriken pistol, got 1 through, ended up killing him. Ceaseless on shuriken shooting is actually quite strong. In the middle board, he held the abstract objective, tapped that as well, and we went into turning point 3. So, he's down 2 models to my 1, and was in position to send his whole remaining team in after the central objective. Basically, the game's going to come down to whether or not I can kill enough of his models fast enough to keep any of mine alive. I won initiative with a Rune of Foresight and used Kane's Vengeance and Eminence Grace, and we just started murdering each other. I jumped on his Balefire Adept on the right side of the board, between my Scorpion and Banshee coming in from that side. They killed him. In the middle, he tried to run off with the Extract objective, but I was able to charge his Icon Bearer, who was holding it with my Exarch. And like I said earlier, the -1 to hit from holding the Extract objective and the Banshee Mask are not mutually exclusive. So he's hitting on 5s, I'm hitting on 3s, ceaseless, can use a technique to parry first. So I killed him, and then just piled everyone else's pistol shots and fight actions into his leader. I ended up losing 2 models, but I was able to finish him off. From there, Brett was able to charge one of my Banshees with the Butcher, but I was able to lock him into a bad hit roll with Contempt, and used the Scream That Steals to parry his retained crit from Khorne before he got to one-shot me, and then parried him out. So he had to use his second fight action just to finish off the 1 Banshee. And by the end of the 3rd turning point, I had lost all my Banshees except for my Exarch, just had 1 Scorpion and 1 Dire Avenger left, but my opponent only had the Butcher. I realized, as I was working on this, that I had actually made a mistake. My Exarch died fighting against his Chosen, so at this point I had 1 Banshee, 2 Scorpion Warriors, and 1 Dire Avenger remaining. I am going to upload a picture here. Wanted to correct it, but couldn't be bothered to re-record. Going into turning point 4, I was able to max out my TAC op, confirming kills off the Space Marine bodies, and I won initiative. Exarch charged, killed the Butcher. It's a lot less scary when it's only hitting on 5s, and again, you can parry first. So score for the second round, 19 to 12 in my favor. I was able to max out the kill op, tac op, and score a little bit controlling the Extract objective in turning point 4. So going into game 3, was against Phil playing Commandos on Vulcus, map 6. The crit op was Loot. I really like Blades of Cain on Vulcus. I know there's a lot of teams that can position in weird ways and abuse the 3rd story with snipers. Blades of Cain does it in a much more interesting way and abuses the 3rd floor with a Flying Howling Banshee. And just coming off the top ropes at people. It's great. So, here I took a Scorpion Exarch with a Claw, 4 Howling Banshees, 1 Scorpion Warrior, and 2 Dire Avengers. Took all the faction equipment, except for the Rune of Prophecy, and took 2 Stun Grenades, which I just didn't end up using. Should have just gone with the Rune of Prophecy, but... TAC op was Overrun, and again selected the TAC op as my primary. My opponent left the Burn a Boy at home, opting for an additional boy instead for the extra choppa. He took Surveillance as his TAC op, and selected that as his primary op. So the real story of this game was that I was able to get a Howling Banshee onto the 3rd floor vantage point on turning point 1, and stage my melee threats where he couldn't really get to me, and I could use the acrobatic technique with that Howling Banshee, just going over walls and getting after his models pretty much wherever he goes. That lets me set the pace for the trades in the game, and anytime he traded for one of my pieces, it was always for a piece that had already activated, and in order to do it, he would have to put something else in danger. So it just kind of creates this play pattern of me, charging, getting a kill, shooting and softening something up with a shuriken pistol, not quite getting 2-for-1s, but potentially wounding models, and then he's not on great odds to kill me back. So the game plan was maximum violence, simplifying the game state as quickly as possible. And Phil played well, but he also had his dice fail him a couple times, and there isn't really a whole lot in Kill Team that punishes bad dice quite like the Firefight ploy Contempt. For example, I'd used a Striking Scorpion to move up, shoot his bomb squig, and then dash behind a wall where it wasn't visible to very much. But Phil could charge him with a Breacher Boy that had already taken a couple wounds from a Shuriken pistol. He goes, he makes the charge, but he only gets one hit. I lock him into that dice roll with Contempt so he can't reroll, and then, take 5 damage, I'm still at 3, and kill the Breacher Boy during its own activation. So Phil was able to get some points on loot, and was able to max out surveillance because of some really clever positioning with a Grot Commando, who's so good for scoring that attack up. But I was able to press the attack so hard that I was able to max out my score in the game, just off of the Howling Banshees, going over walls, coming through doors, and pushing him back. So after 3 rounds of the tournament, I was able to come out with 3 pretty convincing wins with Blades of Cain and took first place. Second place went to Brian, who's running Hyrotech Circle. Third place to Phil, whose commandos I played in round 3, and Phil also won Best Painted, and could have won it with his beautiful Void Dancer troop as well, which Will used to play the buy fights. Phil's really talented, and he's the one that came up with the Adeptus Adequate Moose logo, which we're pretty pleased with. So yeah, that was CarnageCon, Kill Team. First time ever having Kill Team there. It went really well. Looks like we'll be back at it next year. And Will made some good connections with folks running other local cons, so I know he's already lined a couple things up for this spring, which is really exciting. As far as upcoming events, this next weekend, Will and I are headed to a 3-round tournament in Montreal on November 30th. Montreal is the closest real city to Burlington, even though it's over the border. So, really looking forward to getting to know that community better and starting to hit more of their events. We have a 3-round tournament planned here in Burlington on December 14th. So if anyone's going to be in the area, Vermont, around Christmas, hit us up. We'll give you all the details. It is on BCP. And then several of us are planning on going to the Everwinter GT in Boston in that first weekend of January. So, if you want to hear more about some very adequate Kill Team in Vermont, please like and subscribe to the channel. We will have more content posted soon, including a series of videos I'm working on to help folks learn to play Blades of Cain. And hopefully I get a chance to meet some of you over aboard soon. But until then, good luck on those initiative rolls.